And so this month we're here, Tevet. And Tevet really, when I think about it, every year Tevet is so crucial because we are coming into the last quarter. And some of us, I'm a lawyer, but I'm in the accounting industry. And accounting industry, the final quarter is, now last year I talked about the final quarter. Final quarter is always very important because your entire year's performance, this is your last chance to adjust. This is your last chance to catch up. So for a lot of you, this will be a time that you need to begin to look at what has happened the past 9 months and do some adjustment. And the good thing is, this year, the last month, there is double grace. We have 2 Adar this year. So every time you have 2 Adar, it shows that it is a very vital year. You need that extra time to overcome, to cross over. So Tevet, and the subtitle is called A Month Allowing Manifestation. It's like people don't like the word manifestation, right? If you come from charismatic stream manifestation means demonic manifestation, right? But manifestation can have the good one and the bad one. But regardless, God is going to use that to mature us. Now, I'm just going to quickly talk about the cycle that we are in. Every time we come here for, we're just talking about, just talking with in our family, with the children. It's, how come sometimes you can't see the moon? Oh, okay, let's talk about the moon system or whatever. And the moon calendar, right, is really the Chinese use that, the Muslim use that, of course, the Jews use that. When we come here to celebrate new moon is big or small? Small. Okay, this is not a trick question, you better know, okay? So when the beginning of the month, the moon is really, really small. That's why when you look at the Muslim, when they decided whether there is Hari Raya or not, they want to see whether they can see evidence of moon. Once they see it, they say, okay, new moon. So the Jews call that Rosh Chodesh, and it's really the relationship. At the end of the day, it's between God and us. And we always call that cyclical. That means we go through a cycle. Every cycle, there's an opportunity to respond. And when we don't do certain things, we can't advance. And that's a bit like game, right? I mean, those of you who are into computer game, okay? I mean, lately I've been playing some computer game. And, the game, when you're at our age to play game, you have to play game that can finish quite quickly. You don't have the luxury of playing the whole day, right? But the thing is, when you play games, you get stuck. I mean, I see the young people, I see like Arden, they all play games. It's like, wow, so fast, finish already. It's like our brain is not working so fast already. But that's the thing about cyclical is if you miss certain event, you can't progress. So that's the thing with first fruit. And I want to encourage everyone, if you still think this is very weird, right? Why are we here every month after 5 years, after 10 years? You have to go through every month. You have to go through every prophetic promises and try to engage and see whether you are shifted as a person. You have to try that for 1 year, then you will know. Otherwise, you won't know the entire great blessing cycle. So, historically, of course, when they come for Rosh Chodesh, they bring their very best crops, right? Because they are farmer. So when we talk about first fruit, it's literally their best. They plant certain crops and then they pick out the first batch, the best, and they store it. It's an insurance. Because if something happened, they will take it out. When we come for first fruit, God is saying that I want your insurance. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have insurance. Not at all. But I'm just saying that faith demands some kind of unknown. Faith demands us engaging in the unknown. If you invest, I mean, yesterday, a few days ago, Friday, we just had Maybank come in, want to sell a new product. And they are like, look, these days, if you say, I have capital and my investment, I don't want to lose my capital, the bank will tell you 1%. It's like worse than FD, okay? And so that's the thing. If you want higher yield, you need certain level of risk. So that is, faith, that's why somebody say faith is spelled as R-I-S-K. There is an element of risk. So God kind of trained the people to come into the moment of faith. It's a test of what we call covenantal faith, okay? So every time we come here, it's an opportunity for us to show our faith. It's an opportunity for us to choose again. That's why regardless of what happened the last week, whether you have a good month or bad month, it doesn't matter. Now we are at reset. You can do well again or you can do not so well again. So we use the concept once again because we have to repeat, right? See, to win, to do well in assignment is okay, right? Most people can get one good result. I mean, I'm talking about those average students. I'm not talking about the super smart student, right? Average student, once in a while, you get good result, right? 98 mark. It's, never before. But then, the key is, can you do it again? Can you repeat the consistency? So in our finance, in our time, in our emotion, in our submission, every time we come into some kind of problem, can we come into the place where we repeat the process of faith, where we can trust God again and again? And that's why sometimes I look at someone like Jacob. He didn't really have a full spectrum of blessing. Do you realize that? Because he overcame a few times, but do you realize towards the end of his life, he was depressed most of the time? So he doesn't understand the concept of once again. And once again, really, it is going to reveal the nature of covenant, because God will always come. God will always come and ask you certain questions. So that's why every time we come here, we have an opportunity to engage with the prophetic portal. Now, by the way, the Christmas event, I was just thinking, we used to say, oh, what kind of meeting is that? And, is it going to be fun? Is it going to be party? Oh, let's do evangelism. So, but by the way, it's not an evangelistic meeting. I don't really like the word evangelistic. You know why? Because when we are here, we are not, you see, our evangelists proclaim kingdom. But you don't make people believer. That's not your job. The job is the Spirit of God. So that's why when we have this kind of meeting, I prefer it to, at least internally, we should call it an open heaven event. Because when people come, they are touched by the anointing, they are touched by whatever. You see, people can choose to follow Jesus for whatever reason. Maybe you are friendly, maybe the place is nice, maybe the food is nice. Doesn't matter. That's not your problem. So that's why when we come here, we are always looking for prophetic portal. And, Judah did great today and the prophetic team. So when everyone is kind of aligned about what we want to do, suddenly there's an opportunity. And every month we're here for that. Okay, why first fruit? Now this is very generally, now we talk about the different elements, but you see, we always talk about you give before you even have enough, but the very essence of faith is really, without it, it is impossible to please God, right? See, faith is what cannot be seen. We always talk about RISK. You can't see it's something that is happened in the future. But then faith will give us an understanding that eventually the promise will come. Many of us receive promises, right? We hear prophetic words. We know God has been speaking to us, but we have not seen the final product yet. Faith is that link between promise and realization. Then we talk about cleansing, right? The Romans verse, right? But here's the thing, because we're going into marketplace, and this is very, very important, that sometimes we feel certain area cannot be redeemed. And the last few months, a lot of people, now, Tevet, of course, is a month we pray for our government, right? Tevet is a month we pray for our prime minister or president. And I have a kind of governmental podcast, right? So we kind of stop for 1 or 2 months to kind of just do some planning. And then I realized that it's very, very important that we don't fall into this kind of mindset, that certain things cannot be redeemed. That this is what has been happening in our land and caused hope defer to come. So one of the things I was very, so it's very interesting that Lyra, you prophesy for our Prime Minister, because that's what I felt also, that look, despite all the, you can do all the bullet point, list of super disappointment with our leaders. But this is a month. Very, very careful. If you get disappointed with authority, it can cause your emotion to go haywire. Don't go haywire. Look at your neighbor and say, don't go haywire. So first fruit is one of the things. You cleanse your emotion first. And that's the thing. When you read news every day, when you read tons of news, it is, or whatever area you're in, let's say you're in business, you're always looking at data, let's say you're into investment, every day you look at the numbers, and you get caught into the emotion, like oh, now Bitcoin is going up so high and things like that, I lose my opportunity to invest. This is the kind of just one example. Many investors have this kind of emotion. That's why at the end of the day, investor is all about what is your emotional capacity? Do you have the capacity to lose or not? It's very interesting because some people are the most technically gifted people, but their emotional capacity is so low. They can't do it. That's why first fruit, when we come here, whatever is our portion is cleansed. And that helps us to advance. Then, of course, every time we come here, there is fresh choices. Why? Prophetic portal. Always a lot of choices wherever you are. Maybe some of you will wake up and like, oh, I'm very lazy, I don't want to come today. But you came today, and I hope you are glad because you are here. And then this one, Tevet, specifically, we're talking about manifestation. You have heard me say many times, manifestation is mercy. Because when someone manifests, then you know it's like illness, right? If you have symptoms, then you can go and check out and maybe, oh, it's cancer or whatever, but at least it's early stage. You don't want to hear that it's late stage. That's the thing about manifestation. Some things will not remain hidden because eventually God will cause it to come out, whether it's a good thing or bad thing. Now, the good manifestation works like this, that sometimes there's a lot of things that God wants you to begin to manifest in the marketplace. Then you're like, no lah. I'm still very churchy and things like that. Of course, nobody will say I'm very churchy, but your behavior is very churchy. Then God will kind of put you in the marketplace, and you have no choice but to manifest. And that's what happened with Daniel, right? That's what happened with Joseph, right? They had no choice but to manifest their anointing. That is what we meant when you hear a prophetic word, a line will be drawn over. So it can be a positive or negative kind of thing. All right, so let's talk about Tevet, right? Tevet is a 10-month counting from Nisan, so we're into the final quarter. The good news is that we had 2 months of Adar. So basically, we still have 4 months. 4 months for crossovers. So do you realize that last year, Tevet, I think it was a bit later, right? So we're in the final quarter. Last year, I talked about this, but I'm not going to talk about this here. But when we count for every month, there's always time and space to develop the future. That's the nature of cyclical, okay? So one of the things we always focus when we go into the final quarter, we always think about when is Passover, because that's the new year for us. That's the new crossing over for us. So the civil calendar is always a bit faster, right? You see, January is coming, and people are thinking about, what to plan and things like that. But for us, the real crossover is Passover. And so that's why every time we have First Fruit, we also have Tribe Advancing School. I hope many of you have signed up because we're going to do a lot of emphasis on the atmosphere, the intercessor. Now, by the way, one of the things about authority, and we'll talk about that. Now, of course, this month concerns government and things like that, but any kind of authority is like this. Every time you felt a negative emotion towards your authority structure, the best way is to be intercessor for them. When you pray for them, you can't really declare bad things against them, right? You can't. That's why that's one of the things that we try out. Is that when people say, I really, really don't like this person, okay, you're assigned to pray for this person. And it worked. Yeah, that's why we want to discuss how we can shift atmosphere, how we can use intercession, warfare, dominion, occupation. These are all the theme for the year. So do sign up for Tribe Advancing School if you have not. That's every month when we have First Fruit, okay? 2 to 4. Then, of course, the other thing about Tevet, because we are coming to a close already, the final quarter, this is the time to review. Time to review, of course, there are 2 things, right? First is, are we ready to truly go into 5784, but also kind of wrap up 5783. Now, by the way, do you know 5783 did not finish at head of the year? Because we had to consider it from Passover to Passover. So not quite finished yet. Are we processing correctly? And you have been hearing the word processing for many, many times, but we have to use, that's why every time we come for First Fruit, there are different, you can watch Robert Heitler, he will teach, every time he will teach like what is the essence. Also Michelle will do her First Fruit, which is more aligned with time to advance. For me, I'm always looking at what is the theme of the year, and whether we are aligning with that framework or not. So that's one of the things that we have to get right, because 5784 is all about warfare, right? It's all about occupation, not just crossing the door, but we are actually fighting at the gate. So that's why many of you, maybe this is a year for you to venture into some kind of, okay, I don't want to use the word business, okay, but some kind of assignment, some kind of project. Yeah, some of you need to enter into project. Actually, one of the things that, just some ideas are later we're going to have governmental micro-church gathering. Now, if you are somewhat interested, this coming season, we're going to focus more on media, talk to David Tiang. But as I look at it, then I realize there's a huge subset on education. Is it education? It is linked, but it's not quite the same. We really need someone to begin to champion an education micro-church. I mean, I like the news, but it's not our area. So I don't know. You don't have to be teacher. You can be student. You have to be someone that is a stakeholder in Education Mountain. And I think really, really important because God is really blowing up the education sphere right now. And it's like it has been there for, formal education, 300 or 400 years. I mean, of course, informal education for thousands of years. But God is changing all these things because the enemy has weaponized it, but God has a plan to overturn. So who knows, if any of you are really interested, come to talk to some of us. We'll help you to get started. Education microchurch. Now let's talk about the 3 months leading out, right? Tevet, Shevat, and Adar, right? So just very quickly, the macro team, right? So Tevet already say it's a final quarter. It's a month of the light because it's Hanukkah, and this is a month you watch your civil leaders. But more important, I say, you watch how you watch your leader. Because it's really our negative emotion. And, those of us who are in governmental microchurch, it's very easy to get emotionally negative. Very, very easy. Then, of course, this is a month we have our starting the year off right. Why? Because the civil and Hebrew, the prophetic mandate has to come together. It has to align. So that's where, when we are preparing for our civil calendar, January, we are starting school, starting work, then all of a sudden we can align with what God is saying. Then Shevat, the next month, we continue to look at whether our sphere is growing. The concept of stewardship, if you're planting, this is the month to look at your plants. Now, by the way, plants doesn't mean gardening. Some of us don't like gardening, right? Some of us like, and I'll say most of us don't like, but it's really things that you grow, things that, it could be fish, I don't know. It could be human. You're leading some human, but you're asking this question, are those under you growing? Because if people follow you and they die, something is wrong with your stewarding anointing, right? That means you are at the lowest level of leadership. Lowest level of leadership, right? You can just lead yourself. Or maybe you can't even lead yourself. Actually, lowest level is that you lead yourself, but then you can lead other people. So a lot of people are stuck at that level. Then finally, we have Adar. This year, double portion. So great, right? So Adar is a month. It's like you want to cross over already. You want to fight the war already. You are getting your supplies. You are finally, after 1 year, you are getting your true identity. See, that's why I kept going back to the game analogy because, so Colin and I are playing a game, right? And we're like, okay, if we reach the final stage, and if we don't get all our supplies, if we don't get all our upgrades, can we still win? Then we're like, not very sure. So that's the thing. That's the thing with Adar. It's like, you are here, but if from beginning until now you have done nothing, how do you release your true identity? It cannot be done. It cannot be done. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just trying to let you know that there is a portion. Apostle Michelle used to use the analogy, it's like a pizza, right? But it's like, who eats a whole pizza, right? But it's like every month, okay, maybe you think of it as a buffet, right? Like a very nice, all the food you like. And you need to take a piece of all so that it's complete. Those of you who live to eat, some of us eat to live. It's like whatever. So that's why it's very important that I really believe that 1 quarter before the end, you are able to rectify all the shortcomings of the year. I really believe that. And I mean, we even say, even if you come into Adar and you're like, okay, I screw up for 11 months, how? I'm in the business of recovery. When people say I'm screwed up, there are options. It's just what kind of options you want. It's like, do you want to go and hide in the jungle of Brazil or something else? So it's like there are options, but the nearer you are to the cut-off point, your options become more and more limited. So that's why 4 months before Passover, I want to encourage those of you, if you feel like you have not kind of seized the opportunity well this year, you are still not out of time, okay? All right, so let's talk about the prophetic focus of Tevet. I only want to talk about 2 things. So this day is just 2 bullet points, that's it. Okay, no need to be too long-winded, right? So I want to talk about manifestation. Because when you deal with manifestation, you can. The key word is can, because a lot of people don't. You can become mature. And that's one of the things, right? Then, of course, we want to talk about actionable. This is one of the words that, I was just listening to Lance Warner the other day, and then I realized this is a very important concept. A lot of people can talk the good talk, but then they don't have an actionable plan. It's like, what are you going to do? The execution. And actually, my boss always said, okay, you can have all the plan, you can have 100 pages of planning. Okay, what are you going to do? What's your execution? 6 months later, what's your execution? 0. It's like, I don't care about your 100 or 200 pages of plan. You need actionable, okay? So these are the things that I want to talk about, because Tevet, why I think about that, because Tevet is linked with who? Dan, right? Dan, D-A-N. Actually, when I think about that name, right, another game analogy comes to my mind. Those of you from our generation, Xenil, Street Fighter, right? You know there's a character called Dan? Yeah, some of you laugh. That shows how old you are. You're the Xenil. Xenil is between the X and Y, okay? So you know Dan, right? D-A-N. Dan, who is Dan's idol? Ken, right? So he wanted to be like Ken, but because he so wanted to be like Ken, he couldn't develop his own technique. So in the end, all his technique is like half-hearted Ken's technique. So he's like one of the worst characters ever. I really think the designer put him there as a joke, okay? But I've seen some really good Dan player, but very, very rare. It's like you get screwed if you use that character. But anyway, I just think about Dan because Dan is kind of similar, right? Because his name means to rule, to judge, or to execute judgment. But when you think about his position in the family, it's quite low. He was the son of a maid, or Rachel. Very, very low. You just think about your own position. You are not number 1, you're not number 2, you're not number 3, you're not number 4, you're not even number 5. You're like pretty low. And yet, the prophetic word, his meaning is to rule, to judge, to execute. Then Moses said to the tribe of Dan, you will be like lion's whelp, who will leap forth from Bashan. Because Bashan is going to be their place of inheritance. It's going to be a place of great warfare, a place of great a contrast between worship of God and worship of idols. So it's like a very, very specific word talking about the future warfare. So one of the things that I want to encourage everyone, now next year I think some of our monthly training will be doing the future war of the church. But then it's not enough to know the future war of the church. You have to know what is the future war of your life. And that's very, very important because that's where redemptive prophecy comes in. And last couple of weeks, we invite people, right, if you need it. Now, if you have enough word, you don't need to ask for more prophetic words. But if you kind of like get stuck and things like that, maybe what you need is not more prophetic words. What you need is how to process it, get someone to come alongside you. But in the end, remember, you are the ultimate decision maker. Nobody can decide that for you. So we go back to Old Testament, Jeroboam, of course, one of the very evil king. The idolatry manifests in Bashan, and it caused a rebirthing of golden calf. Remember, golden calf was doing Aaron's time, right? So after a few, almost, actually by Jeroboam, I think it's almost 1,000 years later, or 800 years later, because the whole Judges era already. So they came out again. I mean, they can remember something they did so long ago. You see, this is how deep the seed of the enemy can be. And sometimes it manifests from many, many generations of bloodline. So we have to be very careful about that. See, to fulfill his destiny, Dan will have to overcome this manifestation of idol. That's why I say every time you have a manifestation, it's an opportunity. You deal with it. So God, it's almost like a test. But it's like, I mean, later we see some other example, right? Later I'll show you. But of course, we look at the other prophetic words by Jacob and all the other people, you don't see something particularly adverse, nothing negative. But towards the end, people are wondering why the remnants of Dan were excluded in the book of Revelation. But we don't know, it's like, yeah, it's not there, but is Dan totally wiped out? No, it's like a nation might not be a sheep nation. But it doesn't mean the people there are wiped out, right? But it will mean that you are not able, let's say, for example, a particular nation, not sheep nation. You can still have a lot of people from that nation being saved. But then it will mean that you are not able, as a totality, you are not able to shift the nation into a sheep status. So anyway, we don't know. It's not in the Bible. One day we can ask God, maybe Dan is preserved and reserved somewhere else. So Dan is a possible example of how a negative manifestation can cancel out a destiny. I mean, we use the example of Israel, right? The first generation. They have a destiny to reach the promised land, right? But because when the manifestation of fear and all the things came out, they couldn't overcome it. They couldn't overcome the fear of the giant, of the prosperity. Now, by the way, do you know some people are fearful of prosperity? And especially, that's why very, very careful if we come, those of us from more traditional background, from more poverty spirit, you have to be very, very careful, because when you start to see the numbers, the deals, right, it's not like 6-0, it's like 9-0 and things like that. Then you're like, oh, that's the thing, it's a manifestation. You're not able to deal with prosperity. And this is something, but for Dan here, it's really the manifestation of idol. As a tribe, they couldn't do it. But now let's talk about manifestation. What exactly is manifestation? So let's look at dictionary, okay? Dictionary, very simple. Action or event that shows the fact of the matter. You know what I mean or not? That means it's an evidence of what is actually happening. So very simple, right? If there's a bushfire, it's a manifestation of fire and heat. Okay, very, very simple. So negative manifestation, let's look at negative. Negative manifestation often come from our inability to control our emotions. So it goes back to emotion again. That's why this month especially is linked with negative emotion against authority. And those of us with that, we have to be very, very careful, okay? So I was just talking to Lyra the other day. It's like, we're going to start our podcast again. It's like, but I don't want to be overly negative, because that's not going to be helpful. Because these days, you see a lot of people, you see in social media, they are like, let's go for the shock effect and things like that. Yeah, I mean, it works for a while. But then when you realize what Jesus said, right, go and make disciples of all nations, teaching them. You see, you can't teach people with 10-second shots. You just can't. You can have a lot of followers, but you can't teach. So I'm not saying it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad or good thing. Yeah, maybe initially you use that to capture some people, and then you can go in depth. Yeah, that's a strategy. No problem with that. But then the thing is, we have to be able to impart properly. See, when negative manifestation happens, maybe for some of us this month, this is actually a window of mercy, because suddenly God causes us to see some of the parts that we have not dealt with. And then we can either rely on His grace this time and deal with it, or we have to wait for another year. Then positive. I don't want to be overly negative, so we need to talk about positive, right? So positive is really the open heaven. When you are here, when you are in your home, when you're driving. By the way, open heaven can happen everywhere. It doesn't have to be a corporate. And when that is there, and we allowed it to rule. See, a lot of positive manifestation is you have to allow. Look at your neighbor and say, you have to allow. And then when we allow that to happen, we submit to God, and all of a sudden, that's why the whole book on the months, Hebrew months, is called time to advance, right? Every time we go through a cycle, when we submit, we can advance a little bit. And finally, we reach the final level. Yeah, we can meet the big boss, right? Okay, so this is a definition, but what are some possible manifestations, okay? So we're going to look at some negative manifestation, and we're going to look at some positive manifestation. Okay, some negative manifestation. So we already say negative emotions. Now, by the way, some negative emotions can become sin. That's why the Ephesians say, right, be angry, yet not sin. So that means there is a category of anger that can be sinful. Now, nobody knows that. It's really between you and God. So we have to be, so these are negative emotion. Negative manifestation outside of God's ordained time. And this is very, very important because when we come here to do first fruit, 12 times a year, we have the 3 feasts, we have all the events. When people reject those cycles, then they are removed from God's ordained time. And then suddenly they are like, why everyone is being blessed except me? That's negative manifestation. And hopefully, that's why I say when people ask this question, actually I'm like, yeah, good. Finally, you see. Because remember, manifestation is for an opportunity of mercy. So when people come and say, why am I not blessed? Haha. It's not haha, it's aha. Time to talk. Time to talk. Let's have a chat. Because why do you reject God's time? Why do you not have Sabbath? I mean, it could be one of the cycle. Now, we're not very religious about this, okay? You know, right? I mean, if you don't come for a few meetings, it's not like going to get cursed or anything. No, don't be so religious. But overall, do you treat God as who He is? If He says you should come, don't give a lot of excuses. There are freedom, if you have to meet, you have to go for a very, very important project, God will give you the permission to go. No problem. But I'm talking about when you do this and you reject God. Pride and presumptions, of course, this is something that is very, very common. I don't need to elaborate. Bitterness against authority. That's why another example is Absalom syndrome. This is especially relevant for the month of Tevet because we are in a place where it is easier to be bitter against the government than not. We are in a place right now. And it's so easy. I can just throw a stone and most people, if I say, okay, let's have an opportunity to complain. Let's come. Let's have a service of complaint. I think we can go on and on, okay? Because it's just so easy. But nevertheless, this is a bunch we are warned especially that we shouldn't do that. And the way to do that, if you really feel like you can't control yourself, then I want to encourage you to sign up to be intercessor, to be trained as intercessor, and they will help you for a season. Even if you don't have the gift, it will still help you for a season. Last one, this is very important, refusal to war. This is more serious than you think. Because when you don't want to war, you don't get your inheritance. You see, sometimes we hear so many promises, right? So many good things, right? People sometimes say, I want to hear all the good prophetic words. Nothing wrong with that. But then we have to understand there is a process of preparing. There is a process of fighting. That's why this is the year of fighting at the gate. If you are not going to fight, if you're not going to kill your enemies, you cannot advance to the next level. So, we are uncertain why Dan failed, okay? Not sure. I mean, did he even fail? Robert Heiler say maybe. Chuck say likely. But I'm not sure. He's not, the trial is not in the remnant. We're not sure. However, when we look at his redemptive word, it does show us what he needed to do to become mature. So that's why, here's the thing. When we receive a redemptive prophetic word, it doesn't mean it's a done deal. But it will show us what needs to be done. And we have to at least try. Or try dying, okay? So remember his name, to rule, to judge, or execute judgment. So these are the things that kind of is a representative of this month. Now to rule, basically, is to exercise our God-given authority. We all have authority. It's all different. Our gifting are diverse. And so when we want to exercise the authority, it has to be within our sphere. We always say you cannot be busybody. Once you are busybody, you are outside the blessing. You are outside the protection. To rule, you must know your purposes. So it's so interesting, right? Sometimes you ask people, what's your purpose? Don't know. So we part of the training here is to help a person to understand their destiny. How you do your destiny is really, I think, outside the scope of the Apostolic Center. That's really outside. So you have to know. You have to be able to process. Now, Joseph and Moses both knew their destinies, right? From very young, right? But then, what happened? Immaturity, right? Like Joseph started to boast, right? Moses what? Moses is I wanted to do the things himself and go and kill someone. So it resulted in a manifestation. Oh, sudden opposition. Joseph went sold into slavery and then went into jail. Moses had to go into exile for 40 years. But then this manifestation advanced your destiny. Now, I'm not saying that you purposely go and sin and then you get thrown into some kind. No, but your mistakes, the negative manifestation can still advance your purpose. It still can. They knew from a young age they're supposed to rule. To judge, rule and judge a bit different, okay? To judge means you know the difference between right and wrong. Sorry, right and wrong. Okay, this is typed too fast. Okay, right and wrong. So, I mean, you'll be surprised that today people can't differentiate right and wrong. I mean, the other day, the first Supreme Court, female Supreme Court Justice of United States, Sarah O'Connor, just passed away, right? But you know, you have the latest female Supreme Court Justice who said she couldn't differentiate male from female. She couldn't define women. Yeah, is there. And now you have did you read recently, right, the three of the top Ivy League presidents say, when the Congress asked them, you know what you're going to do, can you say that you will condemn violence based on anti-Semitism? Cannot answer. Now more than 100 lawmakers is demanding them to resign. University of Penn just lost 100 million of donation. So these are the kind of things. You can't judge, and God is drawing the line right now. God is causing people who can judge. God is raising up Dan, the true Dan, not the Dan that tries to be like Ken, okay? So the true destiny. You always should just go and download Street Fighter and play a bit, okay? Then you know what I mean. That is so annoying. It's beyond annoying, okay? It's like, yeah, kid, you should have some games with you later. But it's like, because cannot tell right and wrong. See, to judge means you are able to say, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. So a lot of people can't do that, right? Especially certain personality. Confucius culture has this kind of problem, right? Very hard. Yes. Then later, actually, because I work with accountants for 10 years. Accountants are some of the most risk-averse people. They're very scared of risk. And then every time they're like, oh, can do or not? I say, you want to do, you do lah. You know, sometimes I have to slam table. And that's why I don't know how my boss leads them, because he is so different from them. He is the most not risk-averse person. So that's the thing, that at some point, you have to be able to develop a backbone and say yes or no. And I think that's part of maturity. Part of maturity is able to say yes or no. To judge, you are at a place of confidence to know that you are on the right side of God. Now, this is very, very important, because today, many, many people worldwide are on the wrong side of God. And God is going to judge eventually. So you're on the right side of God. Not mortality, morality, moral, and conscience. Mortality. What is the right side of mortality? Not die, right? Then the final thing about done, execute judgment. And this is a bit different already, because this is, you go beyond sounding good, you go beyond saying the right things. You know, you have all the plans, you have 100 page, 200 page of business plan, but now you have to perform. Now you have to perform. And you do it with what? With the faith. Faith of what? Heaven. Heavenly justice. To execute judgment means you bring heaven to earth. That's why sometimes you think about judgment, it's like, oh, I'm going to get my parang and go and kill people. No, it's not like that. It is really, you bring down the justice of heaven. And justice of heaven can be a blessing. Very, very important. It's not go and kill everyone, okay? Now, at times, God will cause you to uproot certain things. Yes. All right, so with that, let's talk about some positive manifestation, okay? Because don't want to be all negative today, right? So positive one. One of the positive manifestation, allowing the word of God to judge and order your words. So see, this is one of the things. Now, if you read Time to Advance in the Tevet portion, Apostle Chuck Pierce used the example of his wife, Pam, and say how she invested many years into the word of God. And then it helped her to deal with many problems alcoholism, anger, and things like that. But you see, here's the thing. We will not always have the luxury. So when you are able, and I want to tell, especially young people, when you are able, when you are young and single versus married with children, totally different. The budget of your time is like half gone, more than half gone. So when you are still free, you have to allow the Word of God. See, it's not just read. A lot of people read the Word of God, but they don't allow. You have to allow. That means you embrace all level, the graphe, logos, rhema, zoe, all the level kind of built into you. See, positive manifestation means your past does not define you anymore. See, we are not totally free from our past. But then, when we look at some of the things that happened in the past that you think is super disastrous, and that's nothing. And it's not a fake nothing. It's really you have moved beyond that because you have experienced true freedom and liberty. Very, very important. Very, very important. And that's why you think about Moses, right? Why he needed to be exiled for 40 years is he had to deal with the pride, the disappointment, the murderous spirit, all the things. So at the age of 80, finally, when someone said, remember you killed someone? Yeah, so? And Paul did the same, right? After he was converted, but he wasn't allowed ministry for another 10 years. And when he came out and people remind him, and he said, yes, I know, but I have something else to do for now. Your past does not define you anymore. So that's why cycle is like this. You go through a cycle and then the same problem will come out. Now, the difference is, what is your attitude? Are you more mature now? Or are you still very angry, very angry? Some people are like that, right? They're always very angry because they have not allowed that past manifestation. They have not moved on beyond that. Your testimony demonstrates growth and maturity. Later, we're going to have a testimony. So we always encourage testimony because testimony and the blood of Christ is what is needed to overcome the enemy. So your testimony. Now, by the way, what you say and why we always say 2 minutes, 1 minute, it's not we don't need you to say so much. You don't need to share things which people don't understand. Why do you want to put yourself up there to be judged? I'm not saying you give a fake testimony or things like that, but you want to focus on the goodness of God. You want to focus on thanking, a spirit of thanksgiving, more than anything else. So there's some testimony is like, 60% is all the bad things, and then yeah, I know, but so we always encourage. Nowadays, you're all very good, okay? You all have been trained. Demonstration of spirit control emotion. So this is the cycle, whichever arena you are in, certain things kind of cause you to become more passionate. Like education, for some of you, where some of us are more into government. Yeah, we read those news, we are not very happy and things like that. But it's not really our main arena. But when it is your main area, you read certain things that doesn't go your way, you can become emotionally stirred. So the positive manifestation will be, yes, remember the standard, be angry yet do not sin. You can be angry, but you don't cross that bitter root line. So this is a positive manifestation. Then, of course, finally, most important, we always say this, determined to manifest kingdom. See, the word determined basically is linked with self-determination. And that's why, whenever we talk about self-determination, yes, there are many, many expressions. We talk about nations want to be independent and things like that. You see, at the end of the day, self-determination is you can do what you can do. You can do what God allows you to do. You see, the whole war over self-determination is we have world structure now that wants to tell you what you can do or what you cannot do. So, for example, freedom of religion, we don't have it here in Malaysia. But is freedom of religion a kingdom principle? Yeah, it's not a trick question, right? Go and make disciples of all nations. How many? All nations, right? Go from Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria till the ends of the world. The scope is predetermined. So when we are not able to do that, that means we don't have the self-determination. Why are we fighting for that? We go back to the Word of God, okay? All right, so now I'm going to finish off with just a few slides, talk about some actionable stuff, okay? Now let's just use one verse here as a base for discussion. Ephesians 4, you all know this very, very well, right? Talk about the 5-4, right? So what is the purpose of Jesus appointing the 5-4? For the equipping of the saints, verse 12, for the work of service, to the building out of the body of Christ, until we all attained to the unity of faith and of knowledge of the Son of God, to a mature man, to a measurable stature, etc., etc. Some translation use the word perfection, okay? New King James. So anyway, this verse gives us the time frame. Because we always talk about why we need to have the 5-4, because we need to equip people. Until when? Until the end of time. Lah. Jesus has not come back yet, right? So we have not reached perfection. We have not reached unity of faith. So the work, W-O-R-K, okay? Work of service. All the things that the ecclesia, that's you and me, right, we're supposed to do until the return of Jesus. So we're all supposed to work, right? We're all supposed to continue until Jesus comes. We don't know when he will come again. Maybe sooner, maybe later. But then here's the thing. As long as we are called to do work of service, you see, that's why when you look at the word once more into the breach, don't overcomplicate the mindset. Some of you will be like, oh, are we defending a war? Are we being bombed and things like that? No. It's just day to day, you are going into the breach, right? Every day, there is something that you can feel in the gap, whether it's spiritually or natural or emotionally. So we constantly, look at your neighbor and say constantly. Because we constantly, every time you see a gap, Monday you go to work, can you see gap everywhere, right? But then what is the gap that you're supposed to close? Not every gap. Only the one that God asked you to do. Don't be a busybody. But when we constantly have to do that, because we are all called to manifest heavens on earth. So this is a month where we can expect both negative and positive manifestation. So it's just a month of manifestation. It's like, yes, we know biblically Dan didn't make it, but he could have made it, right? He could have made it. So that's our mindset. We need to think that we can do it. And God's grace is enough for us. So whether it's a negative or positive manifestation, it should push us into what I call actionable decisions. That means the practical side, right? So actionable, things done for practical value. This is dictionary definition, okay? Actionable, not just theory, not just proposition. Actionable, now this is very important, must be measurable. That means at the end of the day, you can say, job is well done. Job is not done. Very simple, right? I mean, let's say in the office, you have a team of people, they're all under you, you ask them to do. At the end of the day, you can say this two words, right? Job is done, or maybe something in between also, job is done, but not so well. But actually, job is done not so well, is actually job is not done, right? I mean, depending what is your passing mark, whatever. You know. But here's the thing, whatever you say you want to do, you have to be able to measure it. In short, we want to look at some practical things which can really cause us to become mature. Now, of course, you know, when we do this kind of teaching, it's really the bigger picture kind of thing. It's really some points that hopefully it will stir your spirit and cause it. Now, we are not here to guide you step by step, but some of you are into mentoring relationship. Some of you are into that kind of process relationship that can help you. But here is really, hopefully, the prophetic unction will wake you up, because we all have that spirit, and God can just kind of highlight it just like that. So when we do that, remember we have to do a few things. We have to consider the prophetic dimension, 5, 7, 8, 4, gates, war, occupation. But then you have to look at your own destinies also. That's why when some people share, oh, this is for us, it may not be for you. You have to know your lane. You have to know your own sphere. So 4 things I want to talk about very quickly, and then we'll finish already, right? So the thing is, we always talk about dealing with root issue. Initially, I typed deliverance issue, but not all root issue needs deliverance. Because you know, maturity, for example, is not a deliverance issue. You can't cast out immaturity. You can't. You can't impart maturity. No such thing. But you can look at the root issue that encourage maturity or discourage maturity. So those are the things. So what are the things that you look? So I think for this one, very simple. You have to ask God, what is the one issue, one root issue? And don't tell me you have no root issue, okay? We all still have root issue. It's just how serious only. So what is the one root issue that you have to deal with? Maybe it's a fear of man. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's fear of wealth. I just mentioned fear of wealth. Actually, when I was younger, I think because we came from this normal family and very Confucius mindset, we are not taught how to handle wealth properly. So we kind of like a bit fearful when we see money. But it's really, when you go into marketplace and when you see people who have faith and not afraid of wealth, and unfortunately, most of these people are unbelievers. Then you start to be able. So that's one of the root issue, for example, for me. But what is it for you? You have to ask. Is there improvement from 5783? Not this year. Now, here's the thing. We're not asking perfection, but we're only saying that compared with last year, are you improving? If you are improving, that means you are dealing. We're not asking for perfection. And sometimes when you are not advancing, then the third question coming in, are you allowing accountability? Because sometimes root issue cannot be dealt with because you don't want accountability. Nobody can say nothing to me. Some people are like that, right? So this is one of the things. I think it's very actionable. I think it's very measurable. You write it down. You be accountable and say, this is what I aim to do. And ask me in 3 months' time, 6 months' time, whether I've done it. You see, when you do that, you are not asking that person to, when we say accountability, it's really the level you want. Nobody can force you to be accountable. Accountability is two-way traffic, right? All right, number 2, expanding your sphere as actionable. See, very, very simple. You have to ask, have you been faithful with what you have? Because if God gives you certain things, certain opportunity, and you kind of squander it, that means you have not really advanced. So you have to ask this question. Have you reviewed your sphere and make necessary adjustment? Because sometimes, and now this is very important for people who doesn't have boundary. Some people don't have boundary. They do anything and everything. And they always come and ask, oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Very kaypoh. Now, I know it's very difficult to know whether you are very kaypoh or not, but you still have to do it. So you go home and ask God, am I a very kaypoh person? Yes, you are. I don't know. I'm just giving an example. Maybe, but I tell you, if you can ask that question honestly, God will give you a very honest answer. Very honest. Otherwise, ask some of your good friends, am I very kaypoh? It's not easy to ask, but I tell you, if you do that and you adjust, it will bless you greatly. The other thing about sphere is this. Did you allow unbelief? Because here's the thing about sphere. I can just ask any one of you, show me your redemptive prophetic words. And I can immediately say, you are doing too small. You are doing too small. You are doing too small. Why? Is there unbelief? So this is something, again, maybe you can ask someone you know very well, I don't know you want to do that or not. You have to see whether you are ready emotionally, okay? Yeah, otherwise you will have suffered emotional damage. But anyway, it's like, you know what I mean or not? It's like, it's like this. This is maturity. Maturity is, come on, bring it on. Bring it on. Be very thick-skinned. Suck it all up. When I was in legal prep, first year legal prep, the Australian, they are like the most whiny student ever. Super whiny. And then the main lawyer is like, every now and then he'll just tell you, you all need to suck it all up. So that becomes the theme of the year, suck it all up. Yeah, because, from university to first year intern and working, that's really maybe one of the biggest transition into reality. Suddenly you're like, oh, this is reality. Reality is you have to suck it all up. So that's why maturity, I want to encourage, maybe you all can find some people that you trust to really question you. That's one of the fastest way to get growth. All right, number 3, attitude on authority, because Tevet is a month on authority, right? How do you deal with dissatisfaction with your government/leaders now? Of course, this month links with government, but it also links with leader. It links with other leadership in your life. It could be your family, it could be in your tribe, it could be your alignment, whatever. So if you have dissatisfaction, how do you deal with that? That's why I already say one of the way, not the only way, is maybe have you considered if you're willing to stand in intercessory gap? Because when you do that, the negative feeling usually will be gone. Usually, not all the time. So it's one of the way to heal, not the only way, okay? So if you need to participate in this, you know who to look for, right? Okay, last one, discernment processing. See, and this is some of the things that we will be talking about in Try Advancing School. Because Try Advancing School, especially today, they'll talk about discernment, they'll talk about emotion. Very, very important. But here's the thing. Are you doing the necessary equipping in both natural and spiritual dimension? And this is one of the things I really, really feel like that those of us from Religion Mountain Apostolic Center, we can get into that kind of out of balance. We don't have enough natural processing. We don't have enough natural knowledge. I mean, it's like if you want to go into Education Mountain, you really have to know what's happening. Or agricultural. Like the other day, I just went to a farm. Goat farm. And very interesting because now suddenly we realize, one of the biggest things that the agricultural farming they are facing is really the price of feed. It's so expensive. All the feed comes from US. And USD is like, look at it, it's a bit crazy. So the government, highest level official is like they want people to plant corn. They want people to plant barley. And if you can do a good job, they will buy it. And they will not only buy it, they will give you land. The government, now by the way, in Malaysia, agricultural land is the hardest land to get. Investor, from China, US, they always say, can we get agricultural land on leasehold? The chance is 0, 0, 0, and no chance. No way. Okay, but if you can grow corn and barley, and then one of the investors come and say, all this land, your grass, if you plant corn and barley, your goat eats what? Then the guy said, you still don't understand me. We plant the barley and corn for the goat to eat lah. Understand. Because now they eat the grass, and then they still have to give the nutrient. Now, by the way, if you eat steak, right? Sometimes you eat steak and you look grass-fed, right? Actually, we used to think grass-fed is good, right? Actually, grass-fed is lousy. Yeah. Green, you got lousy. When they eat grass, not enough nutrient. They have to eat some more green. So grain fat is more expensive, more fatty, and tastes nicer. Yeah. So I think if you do that, it's going to be something huge. So agricultural supply chain. So here's the thing. Just give you an example. If you're into this area, you can't just say, God is going to bless agriculture. Then what? See, the natural dimension, the study, the experience taught to the marketplace people. Go into the mountain. And that's why if you're in that place, one of the ways to help discernment processing, do you have a micro-church? And that's why I really felt very important that education should have a micro-church. Of course, we kind of have informal arts and entertainment micro-church. We have governmental business. I know business is very wide, but still, it's good to help people to understand the morality, how you can conduct yourself. But other mountain, media, we're doing one season of media now. Family can have a different kind of micro-church. When we talk about family micro-church, we're not talking about family ministry here. We're talking about how to deal with family societal structure issue outside. So family is another one that I think is ripe. Family education, we hope that there will be champions.